Hello, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Adam.
Today, we are finally getting to the new Top Gun Maverick movie, starring, of course, Tom Cruise, the sequel to the 1986, I think I have that right.
Yep, 86.
Original Top Gun, in just another reboot / sequel of an 80s or early 90s property that we didn't really think we needed, or some people wanted for sure. But if they had never made another Top Gun movie, I never would have thought about them. Like, I never would have asked if they were going to.
Yeah, it wasn't necessary. For sure, it wasn't necessary. But I mean, it's Hollywood. If you can milk something for money, it's gonna get milked. I mean,
for sure. And
they're milking peanuts these days. I mean, and making up milking oats these days and making milk out of it. So anything's gonna be a movie.
We're milking everything.
Milking everything.
Really? Yeah. Really, I think that's a joke from that really weird Seth Rogen movie, American Pickle.
Yes. I was gonna say I was trying to remember where that was coming from, why it was hitting me, but I kept.
Which is weird that I remember any lines from that like very mediocre comedy.
Yeah, I definitely didn't like it, but in case you've been under a rock for the last 30 odd years, or recently, I suppose, and don't know what Top Gun is about. This Top Gun Maverick, is about 30 years of service as one of the Navy's top aviators. Pete Mitchell is where he belongs, pushing the envelope as a courageous test pilot and dodging the advancement in rank that would ground him. That is the supposed plot of this movie. I don't really think it tries to stick to that too much. It gives you a quick setting of what he's doing, and then it launches you into the actual story. Top Gun is obviously the program the Navy uses to train and get their best pilots, their best fighter pilots.
Right. And what I think is interesting is that the first movie doesn't really have a plot at all, but that does lead me into one thing that I think works, if we want to dive right into that.
Look at you.
Yeah. If you want to throw the banner.
I will get there. I'm sorry. I was looking at other stuff.
Look, you were looking at Channing Tatum is who you were looking at.
I was looking at Channing Tatum, but
it's understandable.
Looking at lists.
But one thing that really worked for me with this movie, first off, I should start by saying I think the first movie, the original Top Gun, is pretty bad. Despite its iconic status, I do not think it's a good movie.
Well, like we talk about all the time, like it's an 80s movie, so it's like somehow over the top cheese and also like whatever. It's a fine movie. It is not a good movie.
I'll leave it there.
We'll let it slide.
Yeah. But one thing that really worked for me, and one thing I didn't like about the original Top Gun, was that it doesn't really have a plot at all.
Agreed.
And there's not much of one here, but there's enough of one that to make the movie work.
I would disagree. There's a straight up mission to accomplish in this movie. Like all of a sudden we have an actual goal in mind instead of like, I wanted to go to school. I mean, I guess learn to be a pilot, or to be the best.
I should rephrase that and just say it's not a plot heavy movie, but it has a clear plot and a clear goal and a clear thing that they're building towards, which the first one did not have.
Yes,
he was just trying to fly better than Val Kilmer the whole time, and like that was it. And this one, I like that they established right away that, okay, we've got this mission. We've got to destroy the Death Star. And this is how we're going to do it.
We've got to destroy the Death Star.
That's basically what they do.
Basically.
It's almost like verbatim.
Nearly identical.
Yeah.
Nearly identical. Yeah.
But it was enough for me to enjoy the movie. And because I mean, the action is good in the first one. It's really, really good
in this one.
In Top Gun Maverick. And I just needed something to drive it forward in the original, which wasn't there. And this provides that. Like I said, it's not complicated. Are we going to do spoilers here? We sort of discussed
might as well.
We might as well. It's been out for a week. A bunch of people have seen it.
But it's also gotten like crazy high reviews. So like,
it has.
Everyone's going to go see it probably. And if not, well, then this is your chance to go see the movie now.
Yes.
And then come back to this video.
Right. You've been warned by Adam.
I wagged my finger at you.
Yes.
Sorry. Continue.
And it's just funny to me, like realizing that I didn't need much. to enjoy the movie. But even with just like the plot, there are lots of other little things that they give purpose to, even if it's really thin, like it's there where it wasn't before. Like the scene in the original where they're playing volleyball on the beach.
Yep.
Which
Yeah,
is just
somehow
like
iconic volleyball
hunky
scene.
dudes playing volleyball and like sweating, which fine if that's your thing. But in this one, they play football on the beach, but Tom Cruise makes it like a team building exercise, which is a thin, kind of stupid thing to add, but it's enough, which is kind of my way of saying I didn't realize how close the original was to being good.
Yeah, it needed a through line. And I'm going to say this because this made me giggle to myself just a second ago. Like, welcome to like action movies, Nate. Like, I know you're new to this. I know you're new to Tom Cruise, liking Tom Cruise movies or liking his action movies, such as the Mission Impossible series that we've talked about in some of the other episodes we've done. There, you don't need a whole lot. You need a little bit of a through line, and that's what makes some action movies better than others, as we can tell through these two Top Gun movies. But like, welcome. It's good to be here, Nate. It's good to it's good to have a contemporary sitting with me now.
Thank you very much. So that worked, and really, I think anytime they're in the air, this movie works, which is good because that's really all people are going to see.
It's the coolest shit possible. Like everybody at some point was like, what if I went really fast? And you're like, you're in a car for the first time. You're like, okay, I can go really fast. And you're like, oh, look in the sky. There's a plane. What if I can go really fast in the sky? And then all of a sudden it's like, what if I also shot stuff and blew it up? You're like, that's what this is. That's what I want. Give it to me.
Right. And so yeah, anytime they're in the air, which is much more in the second half of the movie than it is in the first.
Yeah.
And I'll also add to what works. I think the last, like, I don't know, how long is this movie?
Like 2 hours.
Let me see here. It's 131 minutes.
2 hours.
So 210. I want to say the last like 45 minutes of this movie are great.
Yeah.
Just from like an action perspective, and it's very predictable in my opinion. That's
the part I have the problem with, which we'll get into. But
it doesn't really bother me though, the way that just because of the nature of the movie, we're here to see cool action shit and people fly planes in a cool way. And like we already agreed, they've got enough of a through line where there's a goal here. And that's really kind of all I need. And if it sort of hits the regular beats for an action movie and like character beats, I don't really care.
Yeah.
And that's also just, it kind of reminded me of like when I say this, it's going to sound very insulting, but remember, it's an action movie. I'm saying I don't care.
There's no judgment on this side, Nate.
Yeah, but it sort of made me think of when I was like 6 and I'd play with action figures and I'd tell a story in my head of like who was fighting whom and like who was friends and like betrayals and like revenge and you know, and
the
like
imagination
redemption
starts to run wild. Yeah, and you can build your own.
And this movie hit the beats that I feel like a story I would have told myself with action figures when I was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
Which is why I think so many people like this movie, because it's familiar, but the action's cool and the rest of it's like good enough. And it's got, you know, action star Tom Cruise in it.
Yeah. And it's not something that's this is a different, I suppose, thought, but this movie doesn't beat you over the head with as much, I guess, pro-America stuff as the first one did.
It's still there for sure, but not as much.
It's still there, but not nearly to the same level. I just think this movie is easier to follow.
Yes.
Because you're expecting, I mean, at least I was upon rewatch of Top Gun, the original. I'm expecting the courtship of the girl to take a little bit longer. I'm expecting like class to be a little bit more like confrontational.
Yeah.
And the ending to be more of like a serious situation. And it is a serious situation, but like it's kind of like it's not. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't know anything about it. I think
it just happens, right?
It's not that the first one is complicated. It's that they never establish what the movie is about. So you just keep waiting or thinking that maybe you missed something. You're like, what's going to happen eventually?
Yeah.
And this one, they tell you right away what it's about. And then they have a goal and they just work towards it.
As long as you know where you're heading, it's easy to go like, okay, I can sit back and just let stuff happen to me and be like, oh, that happened. Wild, crazy. Keep going. Wild, crazy. Keep going. Instead of being like, oh, is he going to date that girl? Like, are they going to sleep together? Are they, what's happening? You know? So yeah, I think that's the largest improvement they made here. And I was a big fan of them not being like overly like, well, the Americans are the best pilots in the world, and we're going to continue to be like rah, 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 all the
Yeah, I
bravado
mean,
that the first one has.
they definitely chose the most like easily digestible mission for the military to accomplish, which is like prevent another unnamed country from getting a nuclear weapon, which fine.
Yeah.
They chose something that, you know, is seemingly simple, or about as simple as you can get with foreign affairs these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to move into, you know, it's not a perfect movie. We want to move into what doesn't work.
Yeah. So I personally didn't have as big a problem with this as my girlfriend did, because I saw it with.
Okay.
She really didn't like the last like 20 minutes. Everything beyond, thank you. I was just getting to that quick.
Yeah.
She didn't like anything beyond climbing over the mountain at the end.
Sure.
And this is a spoiler episode, but I don't want to go into too many plot details just because
Basically, she didn't like once it turned into the Tom Cruise and Miles Teller show.
Yes.
I think
Once that happened, because because it got too like, oh, of course they did it. Oh, of course this happened. Oh, of course they survived a plane explosion with a missile. Like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
She's like, it's just too convenient. She said, I expect that from my Mission Impossibles. I don't expect that from my Top Gun. And I was like,
that's weird.
Agreed. Well, because Mission Impossible has established itself as a little bit more like over the top and
well,
a little bit more
but
like
there's also
it's excessive and like uses like new technology or whatever, but it's using it in a reasonable way. And this one does all of that, but it's Mission Impossible is a little bit more audacious.
A little more tongue-in-cheek. Like, we know this is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, we know that like no one would survive a helicopter crash and like a blade like spinning like right here. Like there's no way that it would stop there. And this one's very much more like grounded in reality. So when that kind of stuff started to happen, somebody survives a plane explosion, then somebody survives another one. Sure. It seemed a little bit like too much to ask. But like, I didn't have an issue with it. I knew what I was getting into. I enjoyed it. I once it started to happen, I was like, okay, nice. Let's see where this goes.
I will say
but
I didn't like that stuff in the end as much as I did like the initial assault.
Yeah, same.
That stuff was the best. And everything after that I thought was fine. I thought it was super predictable when they get saved. I was just like, oh, where is he? He's coming.
He's coming. Someone's coming, especially because he's sitting on the tarmac like, let me go. And they're like, no, you can't. And he's like,
also just like
he should have just done a Maverick and just taken off anyway. But
yeah, also he was just like another piece on the board and he hadn't been used yet.
Yeah.
And like he needs something to do at the end of the movie other than just sit on the ship
on the sidelines. And like he's clearly like the best pilot. Like Maverick says at the beginning when they're in the training, like, oh shit, this guy is good. Like end him, like let him go. But sorry, I'm getting animated. I can't think of too much other stuff that doesn't work. I thought all the acting was great. I expected a death or two, to be honest, and we didn't really get that.
It just didn't feel like, I wasn't surprised. It didn't really feel like the type of movie that was gonna go there. I'll say I did not really care for the first half or like the first hour of this movie. I just think a lot of the stuff when they're on the ground, it's a lot of the same issues I had with the first one, with like really cheesy dialogue and like just they were really drawing from the nostalgia well a lot.
Oh, there's so many callbacks here
in the first hour of the movie, and it bothered me a lot how similar they made Rooster Miles Teller to Goose. They're like the exact same person.
So I was reading something, and this, I know we're a show that doesn't dive too much into weird theories and stuff, but I was reading and someone came up with a theory that everything that happens in this movie happens as Maverick is dying in the plane crash at the beginning. When he pushes his jet to Mach 10.2 and it starts to unravel and explode and he dies over whatever area he is. This is all him coping with his life and seeing his life before he dies. So some of the beats are where'd it go? He pushes the scramjet further, starts to die. The death dream. It's his dying fantasy. So of course he's the one pilot in the world that can make this impossible mission work. Despite him only have been intended as the teacher, he ends up leading the mission. Of course, he also makes the sacrifice play. Of course, which he also survives. Of course, and then it leaves the movie leaves the identity of the enemy ambiguous, so we don't know who it is, because like of course he's just fighting a foreign force. He's not fighting an actual like Russia or whatever like he is in the first
Sure.
one. They also say where'd it go? So when we meet Rooster, he's dressed exactly the same way his dad was. He has the same mustache. He plays the same song on the same piano. So that's supposed to be him saying, or the theory goes that he's reconciling finally with Goose's death by, reconciling himself with another part of Goose. He also maintains another relationship with this unnamed person before, the female character, Jennifer Connelly's character, to reconcile the relationship that clearly ended with now I'm going to forget her name.
Doesn't matter.
First movie, doesn't matter.
She's literally just the woman in the movie. That's what the whole role is.
Yeah. And then he also reconciles with Iceman, who obviously like recommends him for the mission, but like had Maverick's back throughout his career. So they get that scene in there as well. So everything that like doesn't go right in Maverick's life, he gets to sort out, and which is why everything kind of fits so conveniently in this version. I like the theory. It's fun. I don't believe it, but I like it. Everything matches up surprisingly
all of those
well.
Things can basically be answered because it's Tom Cruise, and
but
Tom Cruise movie. So like those first things you were listing, like, of course, like he gets to be the leader and he doesn't die. Like, yeah, it's Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but if you're Maverick, like, and you spent your whole life being like this badass and like absolutely like fuck the rules, I don't care, like I play by my own, and I'm an amazing pilot, like you're gonna give yourself all of those things.
Well, right. Sense. I mean, it's a weird roundabout way of just saying this movie is essentially like Gen X wish fulfillment.
Yeah,
which is fine. But yeah, I don't know. I think somebody has way too much time on their hands.
Again, I thought it was funny because I came across it and was like, that fits perfectly. As to why Rooster, when we meet Rooster, he's the exact same person. Looks exactly like
basically they just didn't have a better way to do that. And so they went with the most obvious way imaginable. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, that was basically it as far as issues. Like the first hour just basically felt like a rehash of the original to me, which I did not like. And then it does become its own thing in the second half of the movie, which I really appreciated. And it really grew on me as the movie went along. But my eyes were rolling hard when Miles Teller was dressed that way with a mustache singing that song on the piano. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? That he's literally the same like, no. And then, we move on and they execute the second half of the movie really well, I think. So that's what, I didn't like the first half of this movie very much.
Yeah, I liked all the callbacks, and the callbacks aren't just in the first hour. There's a lot in the second half of the movie as well, but they're sprinkled throughout. But I agree.
All right, let's dive into the performances really quick. If we feel like talking about Tom Cruise at all, I don't know. He plays Tom Cruise. There's really nothing to talk about.
Before we get into like specific people, I just want to. I think we should mention who's in this movie. So
it's a pretty big cast.
The returning greats of Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
And then from there, it kind of goes off the wall. But we have Jennifer Connelly, Miles Teller, Bashir Solahadin, John Hamm, Charles Parnell, Monica Barbaro, Lewis Pullman, Jay Ellis, Glenn Powell. There's a few other names that like we probably won't recognize, but they play a pretty prominent role in the movie. Basically, all of the pilots that he's going to be training. There's a lot of people in this movie that get a solid amount of screen time. And I think a lot of the people we see will be in other projects that I can't wait to see what happens, especially like Monica Barbaro. And I've seen Glenn Powell and Lewis Pullman in other stuff. I'm trying to think of where I've seen Lewis Pullman, but excited to see where they go. But all right, if we want to talk about Tom Cruise, it's Tom Cruise.
I mean, I was gonna say I didn't even really need to talk about Tom Cruise. I thought Miles Teller was better than I thought he would be. I don't know why. I mean, he's been very inconsistent. Like he was amazing in Whiplash, and then he's been like funny in some other stuff, but then he just really seemed to fall out of favor. And I know some people that just hate Miles Teller.
Yeah, and I don't understand why. I also don't have like a great appreciation for his acting. but I can't tell why that is. Like, I have nothing against him, but I
Yeah,
haven't seen anything that he's been in that I like truly love besides Whiplash. So I just don't think there's enough like credibility built up somehow, considering he's had like good roles and he's done well. But
yeah, I've just
meh.
wondered at this point, like if he did something bad that I'm unaware of.
Yeah.
Because other than like Whiplash, and he was one of the leads in The Spectacular Now, and he was in War Dogs with Jonah Hill.
And he was in the Divergent series. I think it
Divergent
was.
series, That Awkward Moment. He was in that horrible remake of the Fantastic Four. He's other just comedies basically, and then a few war movies, which is fine. He was better than I thought. The one that really stuck out to me was that I'm a really big fan of Glenn Powell.
Yes.
And it was really fun for me to see him. He's kind of a dick in this movie, and he's usually very likable in the other things that I've seen him in.
Really? I haven't seen too much of him, to be honest. I know his face, but
he played John Glenn in Hidden Figures.
I haven't seen that.
And I get his name mixed up a lot because his name is Glenn Powell and he played John Glenn. And yeah.
Gotcha.
And then he plays one of my favorite characters in the history of movies in Everybody Wants Some.
Yeah.
Where he plays Finnegan. And then he's been in a couple other like rom-coms that I've seen that he's just always kind of a very likable and very like charismatic sort of goof.
Okay.
And so then in this,
it was off-brand.
Yeah, so it was fun for me and it wasn't what I expected because I'd just seen him like that before, and he was very good at it, I thought. And then, of course, he gets his sort of redeeming moment at the very, he gets the Val Kilmer arc in this movie. So he really surprised me, and then everybody else was fine. I thought Jennifer Connelly's character, the dialogue she was given to work with was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then
but she was pretty girl in... they
tried to give her a little bit more to do, which they do, but she has a lot of like really bad lines, I think.
Yeah,
I'm a big Jennifer Connelly fan. I just think her character wasn't written well. And then I keep forgetting that Ed Harris was even in this movie.
Oh yeah, like the very beginning.
Right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, Ed Harris.
Totally forget that he's there. But that was really all I had to say about the performances.
Okay. I will say the only time what I remembered when I was watching the movie about Glenn Powell, what I'd seen him in prior that I like knew I'd actually like seen him act in, but it was it's literally the smallest part possible, is in The Dark Knight Rises. He's getting his shoes shined when they take over the New York Stock Exchange, and he's a douchebag there. And I was like, oh, so this fits. Like
that's it, because I forgot he was in that. And I've seen him be like very likable in other things. That's funny.
He's in something. And I remember he's a douchebag, and I looked it up. It's like, oh, he's in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked everybody that was in it. I can't wait to see what a lot of the other people do. It's a lot of new, fresh faces for me.
Yeah. I'll say too that I liked Monica Barbaro and the guy that plays
I said that wrong,
Bob. Like I liked their pairing.
Yeah, that's Lewis Pullman.
Okay, so Lewis Pullman and Monica Barbaro. I like them quite a bit as well.
Yeah, Lewis Pullman was in Fast Times at El Royale.
I need to see that because I've decided that
Bad Times at the El Royale.
That Dakota Johnson is like one of my favorite actresses in the world, and I just need to go through all her movies I haven't seen.
Yeah, it's not a spectacular movie. It's interesting, but it's not a spectacular movie. He does a good job. He plays like a kid who runs the hotel, basically.
Sure.
It's just a young guy, but yeah, there's a lot of fresh faces here. I can't wait to see like how they branch out because I liked everybody in their performances. So,
All right. So then, last thing, who is this for? If reviews and critics and reaction and box office figures are to be believed, basically everybody. I did not like the first one, and I saw this because we do this podcast basically, and because it got like way better reviews than I was expecting, and I really enjoyed myself. I wouldn't recommend this if you don't like action movies. It's probably not going to be your thing. And if you're just very against any movie that basically doubles as like military propaganda, then you already know that you're not going to want to watch this anyway.
Yeah.
But basically anybody that likes action movies or just wants to go see kind of a throwback to like, especially the 80s, but also like 90s type action movies. Absolutely. Yeah. I think most people are going to find something here that they can enjoy, it's going to go down pretty easy.
Yeah, there's definitely like a good amount of comedy in this movie that I think
Yeah.
helps soften some of that too. And not that this is especially like dramatic. But
Right.
I will say, like the theater showing that I went to, there was a bunch of, I would say, older people, probably like my parents' generation. So anywhere between like 50 and 70. And they were like clapping and like shaking each other and like getting really excited and giggling along with it, like moving the most. So I think at least that side, people who are very accustomed to the old one will like this. That's why I said too at the beginning of this that it's not so pro-America as the first one is. So I think there's less of a propaganda about it. I know in the first one, the Department of Defense changed a bunch of things that they could show. They changed a lot of the narratives for around characters because of the things that they could and couldn't show, and wanted to paint the military in a positive light. This movie doesn't do a lot of that. They don't change any of the storylines or narratives for anybody. They just say, oh, you can or can't show this. And I also, to your point of if like 80s, 90s action movies, this movie was shot almost entirely without CGI.
Yeah.
So all of the cockpit stuff that you see is like practical effects. A lot of the flying you see is practical effects. That does not happen in movies anymore. Like if you want a pure action movie with like actual action, this is it. And it's like the coolest, highest stakes things you can get.
Yeah. See it in the theater too, with the huge screen and the sound. And this is just something that's going to play way better on the biggest screen possible.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We didn't see it in IMAX because the showing we wanted to get to was booked or was full. So we went to like regular definition, but like still had an absolute blast. And did not take away from anything. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to like this.
All right. You want to get into the stars?
Sure thing. Let me find my.
I got it here if you want me to.
Yeah, we'll be right back with our rating.
Okay, I can go first.
Sure.
So I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5.
All right.
I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. This is a huge step up from the original. And if it wasn't for just how like nakedly they were playing the nostalgia angle in the especially first like half hour,
yeah.
But the first hour of the movie, like really bothering me, this would be a 4. Like,
okay.
This is something I can see myself rewatching like the second half of this movie a lot, just because the plot is simple enough where it's like, oh, I'll just start it here.
Yeah.
And then I can really, really enjoy this. But that beginning, I think, was a bit rough, and it does knock it down a little bit for me, but it did not stop me from enjoying myself way more than I thought I would.
Yeah. I would agree that that opening sequence or the opening half hour is very nostalgia heavy, but I think going forward, I probably won't watch the original very much. I'll default to this. I'll default to this one for sure.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to watch the original again, especially now that this exists.
Yeah. So the background that they provide in the beginning or the first half hour, I think I'll be all right with moving away from how recent it is. So
yeah.
So that said, I gave this 4 stars.
Nice.
I enjoyed the hell out of this. As
I figured you would. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother's in the Navy, so I immediately texted him and was like, "Hey, have you seen the new Top Gun? And like, what can you tell me?" And blah blah blah, and all that type of stuff. So I just thought it was having a through line helped this movie immensely. Having a mission, and they tell us the mission at the beginning of the movie. They don't wait till training is over to be like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this really dangerous thing that's going to happen. It's like, nope, there's this really dangerous thing that's going to happen. You're all really good. Go do it. Go get ready for it. And there's a couple curveballs thrown along the way. I like Jennifer Connelly, so it's hard to hate when she's the pretty girl in a movie.
Yeah.
Also because she's a very talented actor, even if she's just the pretty girl in a movie, she ends up doing a pretty good job.
She had really good chemistry with Tom Cruise. I just thought her lines were very poorly written.
Yeah. And the stuff at the end I thought was kind of or like with her daughter and stuff was kind of like cute and like adorable.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I forgot about that part. That
so there's they threw in enough for her to be like she's her own person while also being the sailing bit was kind of cool, and like they didn't use stunt doubles for that, and apparently it was really choppy that day, so it was tough.
Damn.
There's just there's a lot to like here. Again, all the new actors, I can't wait to see what they do. A 4. It's I'll never get to a 4.5 or a 5 because it's just what it is, but it's really good.
Nice. All right. I think that pretty much puts a wrap.
I got nothing else.
Do you have the quote to put a wrap on the show?
I've got a quote this time. If you got the close.
Yeah, I can do that.
Howard, there's a rather alarming mountain heading our way.